This is video number 117, and the title is Thinking About Mr. Woolsey. The first time I met Joe, I was 7 or 8. I knew him then, not as a teacher, but as summer help for my dad. He worked with Dad building houses and remodeling work. Dad and Joe were working on the outside of a building just north of the Waverly intersection and on the east side of the street. They were ripping off the old siding and overhang that would be replaced. I recall Joe telling Dad there was a large wasp nest in the overhang. Dad told him it was okay since wasps don't sting in July and August. Joe believed Dad and proceeded to hit the fascia board with his hammer. Just that fast, but a wasp zipped out and nailed Joe square in the middle of his bare chest. That day I was the ground crew. My job was to pile debris for burning. In my ventures around the yard, I found a robin's egg in the grass. Being a kid, I thought it was a neat prize and put it in my pocket. At the end of the day, we went across the street to see the owner. The owner was also the town barber. When we entered the shop, he told me to jump in the chair and he would give me a haircut. As soon as I jumped in that big old chair, I realized I made a mistake. I forgot about the robin's egg in my pocket. Lesson so far: wasps do sting in July and August, and don't keep eggs in your pocket. In the school year 1964-65, Benton Township consolidated with Dalton, Factoryville, and Nicholson to become the 4th school in the Lackawanna Trail School District. I was in 10th grade that year, and I decided to take straight commercial classes. We still had sciences that were required. One was biology. Joe Woolsey taught biology. He cornered me the first day of school to let me know that it would not be okay to call him Joe in the classroom. This class was a mixture of both botany and zoology. It was kind of tough to follow, as one week we would be discussing deciduous trees and the next mollusks. But this is about the other classroom happenings. There were a couple. One day there was a large crash in the back of the room. Everybody jumped. Apparently a ruffed grouse was blinded by the sun and crashed through the last window. Instantly, we had a dissection lesson about the anatomy of a bird. Cool. The second experience involved another game bird. This time it was a pheasant. Mr. Woolsey had a mounted male pheasant. It was standing on a board. He brought it to school, but not for the classroom. It was small game hunting season. Across the road from the school, now our houses. At the time of this story, it was a farm field. The farmer had grown and harvested corn. It was only stubble and weeds. Mr. Woolsey placed his stuffed bird out in the cornfield about 12 rows or so from the edge of the road. Our class was the last class of the day. I sat in front next to the window on my left. Mr. Woolsey was walking around the side and back of the room. I was looking out the window and saw a car pull over. The car was up the hill about 100 yards from the front of the school. I observed a man exit the car, and he walked around and opened his car trunk. Next, he took out a long double-barrel shotgun and loaded it. He had on hunting gear and now proceeded to walk slowly along the edge of the road towards the opening to the cornfield. He was fixated on the pheasant he spotted. I think hunting safety zones were the law then, but if it was, he didn't care that he was in a school zone too. This man had tunnel vision on that pheasant. Now I'm waving my hand over my head trying to get Mr. Woolsey's attention. No luck. I broke the rule. I yelled, "Joe, somebody's going to shoot your bird!" I got his attention. He ran to the windows. Our windows were two-part, divided horizontally, and each part was about 18 inches high and 4 feet wide. They cranked out almost horizontally. Joe opened the windows and was now hanging out, waving his arms and yelling, "Don't shoot!" The hunter never looked anywhere but at that pheasant. When the hunter was about 40 yards from that pheasant, he took a shot at it. Being stuffed with sawdust as opposed to the foam blocks used today, nothing happened. This hunter started sneaking up closer. Joe was still yelling, "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" When the hunter was about 30 yards from the bird, he shot again. Once again, nothing happened. He broke open his gun and removed the empties and reloaded. He still never looked up and started to sneak again. When he was about 15 yards away, he gave that poor bird both barrels. Something happened that time. It exploded into a cloud of dust. Joe ran out of the room, down the hall and stairs, out across the lawn to the hunter. They had a vigorous arm-waving discussion, and the hunter left. Joe retrieved his bird. When he brought it into the room, there was nothing left but feet stapled to a board. Joe was a good friend. He was involved in a lot of community activities, like the Nicholson Barbershop Quartet, active member of county sportsmen's groups and other things. He passed away a few years ago. He was in his 90s. A good man. And this concludes my story about a good friend and teacher, Mr. Joseph Woolsey. All the best, folks. All the best.